What is up, everybody? Jared here with carbuzz.com, and today I am bringing you a review of a brand new Mazda product. This is the 2024 Mazda CX-90. It is a brand new SUV that replaces the CX-9 as the largest three-row vehicle in Mazda's lineup. This is a huge deal for Mazda because it debuts their new large platform architecture, which is actually rear-wheel drive. It's actually all-wheel drive with a rear biased in this application, but it is the first rear-biased SUV like it for Mazda. And as we wait for this little San Francisco pigeon to get out of the way, I'll talk to you a little bit about the dimensions of this car. It is larger in every dimension than the CX-9 it replaces, including the wheelbase, where it is 7.4 inches longer than the CX-9, and that is going to give it just a very different look, a much more premium look that belongs in the conversation with things like BMW and Mercedes, not necessarily Hyundais and Kias. We've got kind of this new Mazda grille. It looks kind of like a chain mesh, as well as this new color called Artisan Red. You can get 19-inch wheels on the base CX-90, but this is the fully loaded trim, which means we are riding on 21-inch wheels. You can see that we have an inline-six engine under the hood, and we have special badging for that here on the fender. It is going to say plug-in hybrid on that model, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Moving around to the back, we can see that this has a very pushed back design with that nice long hood. Again, those rear wheel drive proportions are looking really sweet on the CX-90. The taillight's pretty similar to what we've seen to Mazdas in the past. We have our CX-90 all-wheel drive badging. All CX-90s are going to be all-wheel drive. And then we have eSkyActiv G. I'll talk more about that when we get it out on the road, or that badge will say PHEV if you get the hybrid model. Moving towards the back, we have the 6-seater configuration. On the Turbo S model, you can get a 7-seater configuration, so that's going to be a bench seat with 3 seats here and then 2 in the back. The Turbo S is always going to have 2 seats in the back, but there are ways to get the lower end CX-90s as either an 8-seat configuration, so that would be 2, 3, and 3, or 2, 3, and 2 and 3. So there's a bunch of different ways to configure this car. There's an 8-seater, there's 2 7-seaters, and then there's this, which is the 6-seater, which you can get with or without this center console. So we obviously have the center console. This is the most luxurious way to option a CX-90. Mazda says when you get up to this price level, customers want more comfort than they do practicality. So you're sacrificing one of the seats with this configuration instead of getting the 7-seater. We can see that legroom is pretty decent here. We've got 39 inches of legroom in the back, a little bit more than that actually, which is a little bit more than we got on the CX-9. I mentioned that the CX-90 is larger dimensionally in every single way from the CX-9. That carries over to the interior. We do have adjustability here that we can slide this seat forward and backwards if we want that. This center armrest is really nice. We have these butterfly doors here with a decent amount of storage, cup holders in here. And then if I move over here, we have a little storage drawer where you can hide some items in there. Only available on the Turbo S, we have heated and ventilated seats back here. Driving the PHEV, it only has heated seats, but we do have USB-C ports and we have air vents. We've got our nice panoramic roof, and we also have our sunshades here on the side. So this is a very luxurious second row, especially for a mainstream vehicle. In terms of the third row space, we do have a little bit more room back here than we did on the CX-9. This is the 2-seater layout. I'm gonna go ahead and hop in it real quick. So there is no seat belt here in the middle. And then if I go ahead and pull this back, it's not going to come back all the way. It's going to go to its first locking position. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the back seat space when we hop into the PHEV model, but I'm going to go ahead and say that this is definitely not more comfortable than a Kia Telluride or a Hyundai Palisade back here, but we do have USB-Cs and we have cup holders on each side. All right, so now let's take a look inside the CX-90, and we're going to be on the fully loaded Premium Plus Turbo S model. So this is as loaded out as you can get a CX-90, and this thing has a lovely interior. We've got this particular brown leather interior with this really nice stitching with like a suede material here in the middle. You can also get like a light tan. That's going to switch it up a little bit. Instead of this suede secondary material here on the doors, you're gonna have this really fancy cloth. Trust me, it's gorgeous. And you're gonna have a lighter wood. This one has like a dark wood material. And then the plug-in hybrid is going to be slightly different. I'll show you that in this video as well. And you can see that we have the black mixed with the brown. The lighter interior option here is going to be sort of a lighter interior with the lighter beige, and that is also really gorgeous. You can see as we step on in, you're gonna see that we have more of that suede material here across the dashboard, very premium looking, and then we have a lot of that dark finish wood here on the center console. I'm gonna go ahead and hit the start button, and I can talk about what else we get in here after it stops beeping. So we've got a 2.25 TFT display here with a few different modes. You go ahead and put it into sport mode, and I believe it'll change as well to like this red finish, a little bit similar on the hybrid. The only difference is we have a tachometer here, whereas you have like a power charge gauge. We've got the larger of the two screens here. This is the 12.3 inch horizontally laid out screen. There is a 10.25 inch screen on the lower end CX-90 models, but these Turbo S models are going to have this big screen. It is controlled mostly using this very BMW style controller that Mazda has used for a long time now with your little volume knob. However, if you use Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, it does become a touch screen, which I love. I think that is so much easier to use those two. For that, we have dual zone climate control down here with heated and ventilated seats and a heated steering wheel, which is what you'd expect for a car of this price. We've got our 360-degree camera as well. Pretty good resolution, although it does have the big marks, you know, that stitch in the camera. You're not gonna find that on some luxury vehicles, but this is a mainstream vehicle, as you know, it kind of bridges the gap between mainstream and a luxury in terms of pricing. So that is why it maybe doesn't have the best surround view camera, but it is a little bit cheaper than something like a BMW or an Audi or a Mercedes. Okay, so now let's get behind the wheel and drive the new 2024 Mazda CX-90. And this is a big vehicle for Mazda, both figuratively and literally, just in terms of all of the stuff it's bringing to the table for the brand. So I mentioned that this is Mazda's new large architecture that is rear biased. Now, that doesn't mean rear wheel drive. It means that most of the power is going out to the rear wheels, but all of the CX-90s you buy in America are going to have all-wheel drive. Theoretically, though, another vehicle based on this platform could be completely rear wheel drive. Along with the new platform, we're going to get a new engine for Mazda, a 3.3 liter turbocharged inline-six. This is the first 6-cylinder engine that Mazda has had since it was under Ford ownership, and the CX-9 used a Ford 3.7 liter V6. So this 3.3 liter inline-six turbo is going to produce 280 horsepower and 332 pound-feet of torque in its base configuration, and that can run on any fuel type down to regular 87 octane, which is quite nice. That puts it a little bit below some of the mainstream rivals that produce anywhere from like 280 to like 300 horsepower with their V6 engines, but the torque number is going to be a lot higher than a lot of those, like the Kia Telluride and Hyundai Palisade, which are down in like the 260 range in terms of torque. Now, along with that new engine, we finally have a new transmission for Mazda. That is also quite a big deal. Mazda has been doing a 6-speed automatic for years now, and while it was great when it debuted, it's a little out of date compared to what other automakers are offering. So now they have finally gone to an 8-speed automatic. And what's really interesting about that is this is not just a normal 8-speed automatic. This transmission does not have a torque converter. So it's kind of similar to the Mercedes multi-clutch unit. It's only a single clutch. It's a wet clutch, not a dry one. So it doesn't have more than one clutch, but it replaces that torque converter with this wet clutch that engages to get the transmission going. That is going to give it kind of more of a DCT key engagement. I really love this transmission in my day that I've spent driving it. It is seamlessly smooth. When I go ahead and put my foot down for shifts, you barely feel the shifts. It is very smartly programmed, right up there with something like BMW and its ZF 8-speed transmission, to give you power delivery exactly when you want it. So I can't believe it took this long for Mazda to do an 8-speed automatic transmission, but boy oh boy was it well worth the wait. You can control the transmission with the paddle shifters, and that's going to make it really responsive, but even without shifting it manually, this thing is a really good transmission with fantastic programming. So all versions of this inline-six engine are going to be paired to a 48-volt mild hybrid system. That means when you bring the CX-90 to a complete stop, it's going to have a much smoother stop-start system. Definitely not the smoothest one that I've tested, but for a first effort on a 48-volt mild hybrid system, it's really not bad. Now, the version that I'm driving is the Turbo S. So it's the same inline-six engine, but it's going to produce more power, 340 horsepower and 369 pound-feet of torque. Although Mazda says that those numbers can only be achieved on premium fuel. If you feed this 87 octane, you're only going to get 319 horsepower. We don't have any 0 to 60 times because Mazda doesn't quote those, but I can tell you that this inline-six model with the Turbo S powertrain is really quick. So right now I'm on this really windy California back road, and the CX-9 was always one of the most thrilling three-row mainstream crossovers that you can buy. It was always sort of the driver's car of the bunch as a CX-9 goes ahead and passes me. But now that the CX-90 has this rear-biased platform, it's gotten even more fun to drive, if you can believe that. The steering has this slight dead center, but once you get it off center, it loads up beautifully, and it has such a natural progression that I really love. There's a nice weight to it that really allows you to just feel the control of this car through the steering wheel and through the chassis. It all communicates brilliantly in that Mazda Jinba Itai way. I know it just sounds like marketing garbage, but this does drive better than pretty much any mainstream three-row crossover, and it drives even better than some of the luxury options like the Infiniti QX60 and the Acura MDX. And you can tell that Mazda really wanted this to be a fun experience for the driver. It even has kinematic posture control, which is where it's going to brake an inside wheel to get me around the corner better. This is technology that they took off of the Miata. So you can really tell that Mazda was focused on making the CX-90 fun to drive above all else. Now, I will say there is a slight detriment to comfort in that effort to make the CX-90 fun to drive. The ride is on the firm side, and over some of the rougher pavement, we've been on some really pothole-ridden roads here, and you can really feel that you're gonna get bounced around in this car. So in terms of just like pure on-road comfort, it's not up there in terms of comfort like an Infiniti or an Acura or even something like the Kia Telluride. And it's the same story when you're at highway speeds. It's not the most quiet cabin out there. There's definitely a fair bit of tire and road noise. So although this does drive like a luxury vehicle in terms of how fun it is, it really punches up there with the BMWs, Audis, and Mercedes of the world. In terms of overall refinement, it's not quite there. And now that the road's opened up a little bit, I can open up this inline-six engine. This thing is an absolute joy. It loves to rev. It sounds so good. Just listen to it now. It's got a sweet growl, it's smooth, it works so well with the 8-speed automatic transmission, and then paired with this really nice rear biased platform, you can just have so much fun driving the CX-90. So watch, I can go ahead and floor it. Oh, it makes such a good noise. I've been waiting for a Mazda product to have an engine like this. This is the engine that Mazda has deserved for so many years, and it's finally packaged in a premium, fun to drive way. I really can't wait to drive more vehicles on this architecture and with this drivetrain. Mazda says they really wanted to start this inline-six in a rear-wheel drive application in a sedan, namely the Mazda 6, but that the market just wasn't big enough for it. But hopefully, if they can sell enough of these CX-90s, maybe one day we can see the rear-wheel drive Mazda 6 that this engine and this transmission and this drivetrain and this chassis were meant for. So I also want to give you a tour of the Skyactiv PHEV model, which has a very different interior than the Turbo S that we checked out, both in terms of color, materials, and even seating layout as well. So you see we have a black interior with these nice gold accents. I think this interior is very nice, but I do much prefer the materials and the lightness of the white interior on the Turbo S model. But let's check out what else is different here. We've got this really nice metal finish that I think pairs extremely well with the black interior. This would not look as good with the light interior, in my personal opinion. We go ahead and start it up. We're going to have slightly different gauges here on the digital instrument cluster than we're going to have in the gasoline engine car. Gosh, it beeps a lot when you go ahead and start it up. I'm not really sure why it does that. You can see we have our speedometer in the middle. Instead of a tachometer, we have a charge and a power gauge, and right now it is defaulting into EV mode. When I go ahead and put it into that, and I can go ahead and put it into normal mode, what it will do is when you start moving, it'll give you like a certain amount of power that you can expect on the electric motor only before it allows you to kick into the gas motor, which is really cool. And I love this gauge over here because it gives you so much good information. It tells you your efficiency in miles per gallon. It tells you your efficiency in miles per kilowatt hour on the battery. It tells you how much gas you have. It tells you how much electricity you have. Down here, it tells you how much gasoline range you have. And then right here, you can see it's blank because we're out of juice, but it'll tell you how much electricity and how many miles in electricity you have as well. So I love how they've managed to put so much information into this gauge. And then if you go ahead and click, you're going to see we have our safety feature. So it'll show you different dots. They're like square boxes on either side. It'll tell you if people are in your blind spot. So you can really see when other traffic is driving around you, which is quite cool. And if I play around with the MI drive on this model, if I go ahead and put it into sport mode, you're going to see that now we have a digital tachometer. If I go ahead and put it back, now we have these nice, really cool red gauges. I'll show you what it looks like in the other modes as well. So there's normal. It's going to go ahead and change to this nice clean white. And then if I go ahead and put it into EV mode, it's pretty much going to be the same. It's actually not letting me into EV mode right now because we are out of battery. So now I'm going to go ahead and shut it off, and we're going to take a look at the back seat, which is again a little bit different here on this plug-in electric hybrid model. So the seating configurations on the CX-90 really depend on which trim and which engine layout you get. So on the plug-in hybrid, you're only going to be able to get this 7-seater version, although there are 2 different 7-seater versions. So hear me out on this. This is rather confusing. I'm going to maybe flash up a little written card to show you like what is what on this car, because you can get an 8-seater layout. So that would be 2 in the front, 3 in the second row, and 3 in the third row. You can get 2 different 7-seater layouts. So you can have 2 in the front, these captain's chairs here, and then a third row that fits 3 people. Or you can get a 7-seater layout that's 3 here and 2 in the back. Or you can get the 6-seater layout that we checked out on the Turbo S model. It's only available on the Turbo S model, where you get captain's chairs with the center console and then only 2 seats in the back. So 8, 2 7s, and a 6. This is a 7-seater. So you'll see that I have this seat kind of pushed up here. We don't have ventilated seats here on this model, just heated seats. I believe you're going to have to go for that Turbo S with the center console here to get those ventilated seats back there. We do have USB-Cs though, and as well as air vents. You can see that I do not have a lot of room now, but I can go ahead and push the seat back, and now I have a decent amount of leg room back here with this captain's chair. You can see we have this kind of fold out cup holder here because we don't have a center console here. It's nice that you have the captain's chairs, but because of these armrests here, there's not a lot of room to squeeze through here. So you're really going to want to pull the tab, slide this forward and get into the third row. And we do have the 3-seater third row here. There is a 2-row option that doesn't have a seatbelt there in the middle. Stepping through is not too bad, but here's where you're gonna find a problem. So I'm gonna pull this seat back and it's going to lock to that position first. I can't really move it from here unless I get back into that chair. And as you can see, I have a decent amount of leg room. It's not too bad, and I can put my one leg here in between the captain's chairs. But there are some problems back here. My headroom is fine. I'm not really close to touching, but my knee room, my hip room on this side is not great. And you can see this is where Mazda has decided to put the air vent. Kind of an awkward positioning. I really wish it was up here in the headliner blowing on my face, not on my leg for some reason, which is kind of strange. And then the leg room when the seat is in this position in the second row is not great. So you can see this seat is back where I was comfortable when I first got in that one. And watch what happens when I try and slide over here. I can barely get my size 11 foot in this little crevice here. And now my leg room is just terrible and I don't really fit in this position. So you're going to kind of have to choose. Do you want the people in the third row to be comfortable, or do you want the people in the second row to be comfortable? Because you can't really have both. I'm gonna go ahead and try and squeeze through this little gap here. Ugh. Like I said, very difficult. Just to show you again, when I was comfortable, this is the amount of legroom that I have in the second row. So in this seating configuration, it's bigger than the CX-9 in all dimensions, but it's not great. And here in the back, there's not going to be too much difference between the CX-90 PHEV and the turbo models. We have an eSkyActiv PHEV badge. Because we have the top trim level, we've got power tailgate as well. It's gonna do the same thing as the CX-9, where it kind of has this oddly shaped tailgate that you might bump your head on if you're a little bit of a taller person. Like honestly, I'm only about 5'9", and my head is dangerously close to whacking into that. You can see we have a decent amount of trunk space here behind this 3-person third row. We also have some room for our charging cable that I wanted to show you here on this PHEV model. We also have this AC 1500 watt outlet here, which is something that I believe you only get on the PHEV model. We have another one over here as well, so you can charge up a lot of stuff back here if you're doing some family activities. At this price level, I was really hoping that we would have a power seat, that I wouldn't have to pull a tab to fold these down, but as you can see, now we have a decent amount of trunk space. The only problem is Mazda did not integrate any way to fold down that second row from the trunk here. You're gonna have to go around to each door to fold down those seats manually. All right, so now that we've driven the inline-six Turbo S version of the CX-90, I've hopped on out of that car and hopped into the eSkyActiv plug-in hybrid, which is a very different drivetrain on this CX-90. Rather than that new 3.3 liter inline-six engine, we've got Mazda's pretty familiar 2.5 liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder engine under the hood, producing 189 horsepower. It's pretty close to what it produces in other applications, but here, because it's a plug-in hybrid, it has 173 horsepower coming from an electric motor. So when you combine those two together, you're gonna get 323 horsepower and 369 pound-feet of torque. That torque number is exactly the same as what you're going to get in the Turbo S, and the horsepower is only slightly below what you're going to get in the Turbo S, but it is more than you're going to get from the base turbo model. Now we also have a 17.8 kilowatt hour battery. Mazda has not quoted EPA rated electric range yet, but when I set off this morning with a full charge on the battery, it was telling me about 25 miles. So I think that is safe for what you should expect from a full charge on this car. Now, what's interesting is Mazda tells me that when this vehicle hits 20% charge, it will actually default back to the engine and run as a hybrid. It won't let you drain the battery all the way down to 0, which is kind of interesting. So something to consider. I'm not 100% sure if that 25-mile range that it's telling me on here is factoring in that I can't use that last 20% of the battery without using the motor. So I'm not 100% sure on that. I will ask Mazda more about that. Be sure to read my full written review on CarBuzz for more clarification on that area. Speaking of using the electric motor, there are a bunch of different ways that you could drive this CX-90. So we've got normal, EV, and sport modes. They're pretty self-explanatory. EV mode is going to default to just the electric motor, and it is not going to kick on the gasoline engine unless you really demand it. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna come to a full stop. We're on a very empty back road here, and I'm gonna go ahead and floor it and see what happens. Okay. Not very fast acceleration. Remember, we only have 173 horsepower, but the engine did not kick on. We're at about 45 miles an hour now, so definitely not very fast with only 173 horsepower, but it will do the job around town just fine. And I'm not sure if you could hear it, but it still uses the 8-speed automatic transmission when in electric mode, just like a lot of other PHEVs. And it has kind of this interesting electric acceleration sound, so you could hear it go whoop, whoop, whoop. You can barely feel the shifts, but you can definitely hear them happening as you hear it go through the different gears of the transmission, which is kind of interesting. The acceleration may not be pin you back in your seat, but it's definitely instant. When you put your foot on that throttle in electric mode, you definitely feel that you get that acceleration quite instantly. And you will not kick on the gasoline engine when you're driving in EV mode unless you put the throttle all the way down and then push it a little bit harder to the kick down, and then it'll kick on the engine. So we're making a turn here, and I think the road is pretty straight, so I can show you how that works in practice. Come to a full stop. All right, and as we go over this bridge, I'm gonna go to kick down. There we go, it kicks on the engine. It was a little slow that time to kick on the engine, but it's normally a little bit quicker. Woo! Now we've got that full acceleration. It feels, with both the electric motor and the engine doing their thing, this thing feels pretty brisk. Woo! And it kicks down quite quickly as well. Now, if I go ahead and take it out of EV mode, I can put it into normal mode, and it'll use the electric motors when it can, and then when you demand more power, it is going to kick on the engine. You also have a button right here that'll activate a charge mode, where you can use the engine, if you're driving on the highway or something, to charge back up all the way up to 100%, which is quite nice, and use that power later. And then we have the sport mode setting here, which is going to fully activate the engine, giving us our best acceleration. Ho, ho, ho. It's quick, and it sounds pretty good. They might have done some sound enhancement there, but for a 4-cylinder engine, whew, I think it sounds pretty good. I have nothing but compliments for this new 8-speed automatic transmission with a wet clutch and no torque converter. It is right up there, I'm gonna go ahead and say, with like the BMW ZF 8-speed. Like, it shifts, like I'm gonna show you like how quickly it downshifts. Boom, right there. Instant acceleration. It is so smart that you don't even need to really play around with the paddles too much to get the type of acceleration that you really want. And the handling on this plug-in hybrid model is great as well. The steering feels really natural. I'm really loving this new rear-biased platform that Mazda has here. I'm really not sure which engine between the turbo 6-cylinder and this plug-in hybrid that I would really want, because to be honest, they're both pretty great. And just something to consider, if you are planning on using your CX-90 to tow, you probably want to get the Turbo S. Both the base turbo and this plug-in hybrid model are only rated to tow 3,500 pounds, but the Turbo S is rated to tow 5,000 pounds. All right, so that was the 2024 Mazda CX-90. I've hopped inside the car to wrap up with pricing because it is getting very windy out in San Francisco today. So let's get into the pricing. There is a huge spread on this car, one that stretches all the way from kind of mainstream to very luxurious in terms of pricing and premiumness. So we've got 3 different powertrains. We've got the 3.3 turbo, we've got the PHEV, and the 3.3 turbo S. 11 different configurations total. Starting with the regular turbo, you can get that as the Select, Preferred, Preferred Plus, Premium, and Premium Plus. So 5 different ways, starting at just under $40,000 for the Select trim, just under $53,000 for the Premium Plus. So big spread just within that turbo model. Stepping up to the PHEV, you've got the Preferred, Premium, and Premium Plus, only 3 trim levels, ranging from about $47,500 up to almost $57,000. So that is a pretty big spread there of anywhere from like $7,000 to $5,000 over the 3.3 turbo. If you want the PHEV, you do get more power and you get the all-electric driving range, and you know, you get a little bit nicer trims because it starts at the preferred level. Then there's the Turbo S, which is the most luxurious trim. That's going to start at just under $52,000. The premium trim is going to dial that up to $56,500, and then the Premium Plus is just under 60 grand. So this car stretches from 40 up to about $60,000. So it starts where things like the Kia Telluride and Hyundai Palisade exists, and then it stretches well up to vehicles like the Infiniti QX-60 and Acura MDX. Is it worth that amount of money? If you're looking for the best driving car at this price level, probably yes. Especially in Turbo S, guys, it is very luxurious in here. The cabin is very highly appointed. This inline-six drivetrain definitely feels premium. So does the plug-in hybrid one. I honestly can't decide which of the two I like better because I like the silence of the electric drivetrain, but I also love the smoothness and I love the sound of this inline-six motor. So you might want to try both back to back. The one area where I do wish Mazda would have done better is with the ride comfort. I'd like to try one of the lower trims on the 19-inch wheels. I bet you that would help a lot with the ride comfort because these 21s are quite crashy, but maybe that's the price you have to pay for driving dynamics that are this good, because this definitely feels a class above the front-wheel drive mainstream cars like the Telluride, like the Palisade, like the Toyota Highlander. It just feels in a different level of those. In fact, it punches almost to the level of BMW and Mercedes. Anyway, I really hope you've enjoyed this review of the 2024 Mazda CX-90. For more videos like it, be sure to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell to be alerted of our latest videos. And if you want to read my full review of the 2024 Mazda CX-90, be sure to check out carbuzz.com. I'll see you next time.